Hi, and welcome to another episode of Twice as Hard. I am Janelle Benjamin, your host, founder and CEO of All Things Equitable, and I'm very pleased to be with Future Cain today. She is a leadership specialist and the founder and CEO of the Future of SEL. Future, welcome to the show. You focus on equity and wellness in your endeavors, and I'm really, really happy to be with you today.
Hello, how are you? I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining and doing this. And I'm just gonna reach down and grab my mic because I always forget this, and then I sound like I'm in a hole. But Future, I'm really happy that you're here with me today to talk about the ways in which we as Black women have sort of been conditioned over our lives to work harder than our whiter, lighter counterparts, and to just talk about that notion that we have almost ingrained in us. Where does that come from, and the ways in which it helps us or serves us in our careers. And so can you share with me and with the audience a little bit about your story and what the ways in which you've been working twice as hard over your lifetime, and where that came from and comes from for you?
That's a good question. I think what's funny and ironic about it is we work twice as hard oftentimes because we're told we need to. And, plenty of us have heard that story. And we need to because of two things. I think we need to, one, because people don't see us in one way. They don't truly see us. And then in another way, it's because they do see us. So I think it's a both and. And I think the overwork oftentimes is for us to really truly get seen.
Mm-hmm.
And not only get seen as, oh, I see you because you're another race and different, but because I see you and what your talents and your gifts and your expertise is to be poured into here and not overlooked, not stolen, not put on, well, we can't do that. It's a truly seeing all that we have to offer. So I think it starts as a mindset.
Yeah. And talk to me about, I guess, that need for us to be seen. When you talk about that, right? Seen by whom and for what purpose? And speak to me a little bit more about, what you mean by, we want to be seen, but sometimes we're not seen. And what does that mean?
I just coming from the education field of serving over 2 decades in education, I just think of children. And I think when I was a child too, and my personal experience isn't maybe the same as everybody else's, because in every single place where I was from K through 12th grade, I was the only person of color in all of every single class. And I think the ingrainedness in some of our educators from early ages, I see you if you are a person of color, or if you're a Black woman or a Black boy or girl, but I'm going to see the deficits. I'm going to see what you're not doing well. If you are, hypothetically speaking, misbehaving, if you are talking a lot in class, if you are not conforming and assimilating to the system, you will be seen. And if you are doing exactly as you need to, or excelling in that, you won't be given the accolades or a gratitude and an acknowledgement of what you are doing.
It's really, really profound what you're sharing, because I'm thinking about just the workplace and the ways in which that also translates into that system, into employment systems. That notion that we're only seen if we're acting out of line with expectations, right? We need to performance manage them. We need to have that conversation in the workplace about their hair or the way that they're showing up. Talk to me a little bit about, has that happened to you in your in your career, it sounds like it might have happened in school. And where are you from? What city are you from? And where's this, where, the school system you're talking about?
Okay, where am I from now, living currently, and where I grew up are two different things. So I grew
Okay.
up on the East Coast. I grew up in Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania to be exact. So
Mm-hmm.
those are K through 12 and all of my undergrad. That's those stories, and
Okay.
even the beginning of my master's. And then now I live in the Midwest,
Mm-hmm.
and I see it. I continue to see it in education. We see the disparities in the United States, across the entire United States,
Mm-hmm.
for children who are Black,
Right.
and all areas of education aren't servicing what they should be doing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to work, I worked out on the East Coast and then also in the Midwest, and I've seen it there too.
Have your experiences been different moving from Pennsylvania to the Midwest, or is it more of the same in terms of how you're treated in the workplace?
I, as much as people want to claim that it's Midwestern nice,
Mm-hmm.
and what I will say is I've lived in two different states in the Midwest,
Okay.
and I would say the state that I live in now is worse at being nice,
Mm.
um, to people of color.
Interesting. I lived in the Midwest for a little while. I was in Michigan. What state are you in?
Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Not too far over and not too different. So I understand what you're saying when you talk about that sort of Midwestern values and the ways in which, we're treated nicely or kindly. But it's not genuine in all cases. And I know personally I've had some experiences living in the States where um, I wasn't always perceived as competent, qualified, capable. There was questions about what was I going to do, or how would I do it, and the oversight was a little bit different for me. Has any of that sort of played out over your career?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And here's what I will say. I've had wonderful souled people
Yeah.
as colleagues or as supervisors over
Hmm.
my span of time. So I can't disregard that.
Yeah.
But as emotional beings, we don't forget how people have made us feel.
No, we
And
sure don't.
right, and how those people actually make us feel will form a lens and form our beliefs and form relationships or not have relationships, and create trauma, of what people don't want to go back to either.
Mhm.
So yes, I would say in regards to the workplace, I have had people who were not nice, is what I will say.
Mhm.
And I know when people ask me that question, they'll be like, oh, well, what was the race, right? What
Yeah.
do the people look like? And I will say I have personally experienced it from white people, yes, but it's also been from Black people too.
I've also experienced some harms from people of color, and we can do it to ourselves
Yeah.
for sure, in the workplace in a variety of forms. So yeah, this is not to disparage any one particular community, but it's really to just shine a light on the ways in which we sometimes have the ingrained notions that we need to show up and show out and work twice as hard in order to be seen, to be taken seriously, to have our work valued, um, instead of devalued. And the ways in which sometimes it's not always a good thing that we do to ourselves, right? It can cause us our own sort of harms and traumas and things like that, as you mentioned. I'm curious about your approach to your work, right? You're dealing with equity and wellness in the workplace with a variety of organizations as well. And so I'm curious about, what are you seeing, and what advice are you giving to your clients around how best to support Black women in the workplace who may be dealing with issues of trauma, or intergenerational trauma. Having these notions ingrained in us is definitely intergenerational. And so what are you doing, I guess, with your clients to unpack some of that in the workplace?
I think you've heard me loud and clear, right? On the social media platforms, there's certain things I will say continuously over and over.
Mm,
And one of those things that I tell people is you need to sit with yourself.
mhm,
And I continuously tell people link out to link into you. And I'm very serious when I say this. And I say this because when we are scrolling or when we are on social media or not fully present, we can't be with self.
right.
And sitting with self and solace is where you are going to be able to get a clear view of who you are, what your values are, what your beliefs are, what your biases are, and maybe possibly look at the harms that you have caused and the things that you could be better in, as well as your
Mhm,
strengths. So anywhere I go, I always begin with you have to begin with you. Because as much as I would like to work on a system, because
yeah,
that's what we focus on, is the actual system of where you're working. The system only changes with the people in the system.
that's right.
So if you don't work on you first to actually have a coming to self to say,
Mhm,
okay, this is where I could improve, and this is
mhm,
where I need to go to impact the social awareness of all, then you're not going to make those changes. I
yeah.
also look at you have to then want to be proactive and preventative. A lot of the work that you're doing, a lot of the work that I'm doing is people could sit in I'm going to do nothing. I'm not going to change any system.
Mhm,
Or you could sit and look at the future and saying, no, this is what it needs to be done. And I'm going to be proactive and preventative to take on what I need to do. And
mhm.
that doing starts with me undoing maybe some things that I have done to harm others.
That's really, really interesting that you say that, because a lot of people will say, sit with myself. What does that mean? Right. And not realize that there's work to be done, even in that quiet, even in that, you're having that introspective moment, but it's really, you're focusing on the harms and the things that you may have done to cause harm to other people. And in this case, we're speaking about the experiences of Black women, and the stories that I've heard, and I've experienced myself,
Mhm.
include severe traumas and things that are lingering and lasting, that a lot of people, I'm still unpacking. And I think, if people are truly, like you said, sitting with themselves and the
Mhm.
things that they may have done to others in the workplace, they may also realize what not to do in
Yeah.
the next situation. And I think that's also another great way of supporting women, particularly Black women at this time, who, we're showing up, we're showing out, we're overqualified. I know
Yeah.
you are, right? Working two jobs with our families, we're doing all the things, and still sometimes, not seen, not receiving the sort of recognition um, that we need in the workplace. So tell me a little bit more about your consulting work and the ways in which you're currently working twice as hard as everyone else. I know you're really, really busy. So tell me a little bit about what the future of SEL is all about.
Whew. Okay, so the future of SEL is about our future. That's
Mhm,
that's what it is, and that's why it was created, because I was harmed in the system, in the
mm,
workplace system, like so many other people.
mhm,
And I said, I truly believe from my heart, as a heart-centered leader, that there's
mhm.
a lot of people causing harm and may not even know that they're causing harm.
Right.
And when they're causing that harm, it is impacting our wellness. And most importantly, it's impacting our mental wellness.
Mhm,
And the World Health Organization has had the data out. And I know you're not in the United States, but in the US, we've been number one in anxiety and depression for
mm.
years. And it has
Wow.
just grown out exponentially in the wake of the pandemic. So
Mhm,
at some point, I said, okay, I care about this. And I know there's other people that care about this too, because
mhm.
we're people and we're going to our job with mental health issues.
Right.
There's 1 in 4 who is facing a mental health issue. So at some point, we have to care about the people who are
Mhm,
producing the products. And that's essentially what I do. I help people to put systems in place
mhm,
to help ensure that their staff, their leaders are well, and then to help them embody being social emotional leaders. Because when you lead with emotional intelligence, when you lead heart-centered, when you lead with empathy, when you
Right.
lead with your own self-awareness, what you could lead is so much more beautiful and more impactful to others that you lead. And it has a grave impact on their wellness and equity in general. So
how should equitable leaders then embrace those concepts into their workplace? Are we talking about wellness programs? Are we talking about EAP? Are we talking about yoga? Like, what are you speaking of specifically?
okay. Well, I'm sure you know this. Not everybody has EAP. Not
Yeah.
everybody offers EAP. And the other thing with EAP is there's a lot of employees that don't feel comfortable or know even about EAP. And
Right.
EAP usually has a ceiling. So for instance, you might be able to get 5 sessions. The trauma that some of us are coming with, or the mental health issues, 5 sessions isn't enough. 5
Yeah.
sessions is a joke, to be quite honest. So
Yeah.
that's a beginning. And then you don't even pay me enough to be able to afford to continue with the 5 services that EAP offered me.
Right.
So it is then what are we doing in our system every day
Mm-hmm.
as leaders, as a system and an organization, whether that's educational institutions or whether that's actual small, large corporations? What are you doing daily to center that person and their own wellness? So it could be a gamut of things. I'm not a person who focuses in it's this, because the people know their system the best, and what it needs to be in each organization should be differentiated, because there's no climate and culture the same. They're all different. So what people are going to need is going to be different too.
That's fantastic that you kind of have a similar approach to myself, right? Where we do an individualized assessment of an organization and really see what's happening in their workplace. How do we engage, the leaders? How do we engage the staff? How do we support them to thrive in their workplace and show up authentically, and have the environment be supportive, right?
Right.
In so many places, it's just there's toxicity running rampant, harassment complaints running rampant. People are scared, like you said, they don't want to call EAP, they don't want to go to human resources, and they're not seeking the right care that they need for their mental health and well-being, and that affects work. It affects work productivity, right? Which is what diversity, equity, and inclusion work is all about, right? It's just how do we get everybody to come together in an organization, be well, work together for the productivity of the organization. So I appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge and insights with the audience, because it's important. It's important work, particularly now, like you said, through the pandemic, where we're seeing higher rates of suicide. At least in certain Canadian provinces, the rate has gone up. And I'm seeing huge prominent individuals in the United States who recently committed suicide, like Regina King's son, and we just lost Miss US. Is it Miss USA? And so to shine a light on the ways in which mental health, it's an issue and it's a concern for all of us, and there's no look or rhyme or reason for these issues, but we do need to take care of one another.
We
Do you agree? Yeah.
I agree. And I think people have to, that's why I keep saying, please, social emotional leaders are very much needed. Because if you can't center in, I'm going to show up in my authentic self and be vulnerable and have empathy and show that to the people that you lead, you can't expect the people that you're leading then to show that to you.
Right.
They're not going to feel comfortable even coming to you with an issue of inequities or injustices in the workplaces, or that this isn't a safe place for me, or I have a mental health issue, because you didn't make it okay to go to you.
That's so right. And what do you say to those, employees, right? To Black women in particular who need that support in the workplace? They may not have it. They're showing up every day. They're working hard. How do they persevere in those environments, or should they persevere in those environments, or would you suggest they move on?
I've sat in an environment oftentimes as the first, the only, or one of few, every single place that I've been. every single place. And the reality is that you again have to sit with self of what is it and what could you endure? And that cap of what I can endure might be very different in the last 2 years than your cap was 5 years ago.
Mm.
You understand? Because I
Yeah.
think people run out of patience and out of allowance for ignorance.
Right.
So I think as women, especially if you are the only one or one of few, what are you doing for your own self? And I'm being very serious about what are you doing to be proactive and preventative to self? Is it you're shutting off the video screen? Is it I am not blocking myself? I've told my team, don't do this. You're not going in back-to-back meetings, right? I am not sitting in meetings from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. I'm giving myself 15 minutes in between. Is it I am taking out time to put focus for myself because I'm going to sit and do meditation, or I'm going to go for a walk outside, or I'm going to get sunlight, or I'm actually going to take my half an hour or hour lunch that I've been given and not work because we're taught I don't get a break.
Yes.
It's also finding connection, right? Relationships matter. And I would tell any leader or organization, you need to know your people. And so who are the relationships that you have that can build you up, that can listen to you, that can pour into you and acknowledge your gifts and talents? Because sometimes when you're not seen continuously and you're the only one there, that too is difficult.
Yeah, very. Where did that notion come from for you, Future, to work so hard to, go nonstop, back to back, in between, like work through your lunch? I know I've done it in so many different places, just trying to prove myself, like you said, trying to maintain that visibility and that I can do this, and have employers notice that. And so where does that originate for you? For me, it comes from my childhood. It was sort of passed down to me through my mother, who and my grandmother, who I watched working their fingers to the bone, laundry by hand and cooking all the food from sun up to sundown, and tending to the family, to the kids, but also my mother going out into the workforce and coming home after a long day and doing all the things in the household nonetheless. And so I learned it from them. Where does it come from for you?
I would have to say growing up, my mom was a single parent.
Yeah.
So when you're a single parent, you have to do all those things by yourself, right? Like you are everything and you just suck it up. You don't get a day off. So I know I have many privileges that she didn't have. And I think it was, then you train yourself to see something.
Right.
And that becomes the norm in which you then live. And to unlearn that is not a norm, nor is it healthy to be a norm, nor is that equitable, is an unlearning in itself. But it's also a learning that has allowed me the opportunities to get to where I am today too.
That's fantastic. I love that, the fact that you said that, it isn't equitable, because that's really what it's about at its core. It's that, why do I need to work twice as hard to make it in society, to do anything? It's not fair to me. It's not fair to anyone. And I'm exhausted at the end of the day by doing all those things, like you said, by having the back-to-backs and not taking the breaks that I need for my mental health and well-being, to show up in the workplace and be a valuable contributing member. So hopefully people have learned a little bit through this conversation about the ways that they can do that. How can our viewers get in touch with you if they want to after this? Is your LinkedIn the best place? So
I would say LinkedIn, but I will ask people to kindly put a note. If you are pressing connect, I don't know that there's a reason that you want to connect. Okay. So I would, if you're saying, hey, I would love to bring you in to speak. Hey, we would like to have you come into our organization. Hey, I would just love to learn more from you. Whatever that hey is, I would ask you to kindly put that in the notes, because I like to be very personable when I meet people and I connect to them on LinkedIn, and I try to do voice notes to people and just check in with people. And I can't do that if I have a ton of connections who have access to message me too. So I try to be mindful of that.
I appreciate you and all the connections that you've, made with me. You are highly personable, sending those lovely, sweet voice notes just to check in. You really do live the values that, that you preach, and people would be wise to reach out. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of my show. And people can reach you also at futureofsel.com if they want to connect for some support in their organization. So thank you so much, Future, for being a guest on the show, and look forward to doing this again with you. Please don't forget to click subscribe down below, and we'll see you again for another episode.